everyone? Welcome back to Womansplain. Today, I am super excited to introduce our incredible guest, Laura Rubin. She's extremely accomplished, but currently the founder of AllSwell Creative, as well as the author of a recently released book, The Big Unlock. We're going to dive into her story. I'm going to pass it off to her for a little intro and then go from there.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you both. I really
Thanks for
appreciate
being
you
here.
Well, we are honored
inviting
to have
me
you.
We're
We're
so
really
into your
honored.
community.
excited.
So I have one of the most unlikely job titles I could have ever imagined. I actually still think I should just put it out to your audience if they come up with something better. Like there is a free copy of the book waiting for them. But I am a journaling expert.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love. And obviously very topical right now. I
Yes.
think with just the amount of technology and AI and everything that's going on. So amazing thing to be discussing and I think is like a new trend. I think, ironically on the internet, as I think especially young people are searching for, in connection to themselves as well. So I think I'm really excited to learn more about that. I know before you had a little bit of a winding journey to become
Yes.
a founder and author. And would love to kind of start there. I know you started kind of in corporate America and you call yourself a corporate refugee, which I love. I think Sol and I hope to be corporate refugees eventually. Like maybe just walk us through your background and how that inspired you and kind of led you to where you are today.
Yes. Well, I like knowing that you're both aspiring corporate refugees.
Are we all?
Yes. Well, I actually really, I think of those formative years professionally where I was working within large organizations to have been incredibly important.
For sure.
And I actually think that now when people come to me and they're like, I want to start a business and they're straight out of the gate coming from school, I often say, go make mistakes on somebody else's dime, get paid to make mistakes.
Totally.
And I was very fortunate. That was some of my initial experience. And I started my career at Ernst& Young. And I was on the marketing side, and I worked specifically on marketing for the management consulting practice,
Okay.
which was an extraordinary place to be at the time because I was around these incredible minds and helping them with storytelling.
Yeah.
So it was an exceptional experience, but ultimately I just felt like the subject matter was gray, the walls were gray, the people were gray, and I wasn't gray. And despite the fact that I'm wearing gray. And I wanted to be, instead of in a B2B environment, a B2C environment. And so that was my second corporate job where I leapfrogged over to the entertainment industry, where I worked for USA Networks. And in that role that I initially had, I was the head of interactive for 3 television networks. And then I know I was so
Okay.
young, it was crazy. And then I was head of marketing for 3 properties that were associated with media. And then eventually I got asked to take the role of being the head of corporate communications for the
Wow.
business. And what was interesting about that was it was somebody's dream job, but it wasn't mine. I'd gone from B2B to B2C and then back to B2B again.
Okay.
So that all of a sudden I was at the top of the heap, but it was the wrong heap. And that was the last time I was ever employed.
Wow.
Well, you had an incredible career, I will say. And look, like Sol and I started our careers in investment banking. It's very reminiscent of consulting. Like it's a great training ground. It is difficult and challenging and can definitely be a little gray at times. So I understand that world you were in. And then you jumped into entertainment. So tell us about, I guess, the decision to leave. Like, because that's an incredible job. Even if it wasn't your necessarily dream job,
Mm.
that job was a lot of jumping off points. You could have gone and done a lot of stuff, right? That could have been extremely prestigious and high paying and like impressive if you wanted to be more direct to consumer. So what was like the kind of internal event conflict that really made you jump off the cliff a little bit?
So I took that job, closed my office door, put my head down on the desk, and cried.
Okay.
I was so sure this was going to be a bad fit, but at the time, I didn't feel this sense of agency around saying no because the perspective that I was raised in was you work hard, you move up, you do the best you can. I've got immigrant work ethic, right?
Totally.
You don't turn a job down. You don't say no to your chairman
Yeah.
Yeah.
because essentially you're just like saying like just fire me, right?
Mhm.
And I didn't feel that I had any choices. So I walked into something that my heart wasn't in. I don't think that that I was particularly well suited for it. And instead of really having gone from somebody who was essentially like a problem solver and moved around the organization in leadership positions, I I didn't feel like I was very good at it because my heart wasn't in it. And it just became really evident because of my commitment to doing anything I do with a high degree of quality that it was time to make a change.
And what was that thought process? I mean, you talked a little bit about having that like work ethic and what you're actually interested in and just being really true to yourself, being like, this is not it. This is not for me. How did you kind of walk us through, I guess, your internal dialogue? And how did you ultimately make that decision and how hard was it?
It was it was collaborative. It wasn't the right role for me. And it became really evident, not just to myself, but also to leadership. And instead of me trying to find another role within the organization or continue down a path that wasn't the right thing for me, I said, I'm out. And I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know I don't want to do this.
Wow.
And I figured I'm going to take 6 months off. I'm going to get my head out of a vice and figure out what I want to do next and do a bunch of yoga. And if I have to tap into that 401k, that's fine. And within a matter of weeks, people heard I was at loose ends and started contacting me and asking me to do consulting work.
Wow.
So I am a complete accidental entrepreneur. I never set out to start an agency. I never even set out to start a consultancy. But about 6 months, maybe a year went by, and I looked around and I said, I didn't have to tap into that 401k. And maybe I'll just formalize things slightly and I'll keep doing this until the work dries up and I'll go get another job. And the
Yeah.
work never dried
Wow.
up. So that was really how I found myself in the position of starting a business. I can't tell you that I had this big moment where I said, this is what I'm going to do. It just was interesting that that work ethic that I had
Mhm.
brought through my career when I was serving entrepreneurs and businesses in this consulting role, I was I was operating at a much higher level than they were used to being serviced.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned yourself, like you've always cared about community, cared about, communication and community building. So I'm sure that, really shown through your work, even if you were in corporate and in a place where you didn't really want to be. And so what kind of consulting were you doing after, a couple of months of reflecting?
I was doing marketing and communications, and I have to tell you, it wasn't months. It was like 2 weeks.
Oh,
It was
wow.
literally 2 weeks when, a potential client called me and said, "We have a a f a French modern furniture company that's based in the Caribbean. Could you fly down and redo all of our branding and shoot the campaigns and put a team together, etcetera," and the whole thing. And
Wow.
so my first gig was in Puerto Rico, and I moved there for
Oh my
a
gosh.
while. No, it was an incredible
Yeah.
gig.
And
And so it just kept
wow.
snowballing from there, one very unlikely opportunity leading to another. And it was exciting for me because it was all of these different business to consumer permutations. And it just filled me with such a sense of creativity
Yeah.
because I was helping all of these entrepreneurs with storytelling.
And how old were you at that time?
I mean, I think I was like 12. I don't know. I don't
You're
even
a fetus.
remember, but
Yeah.
I was a child. I don't I like the fact that I was just scrappy and figuring things out, and if you had to put it together with glue and popsicle sticks on the inside, you made sure that it was absolutely elegant and polished on the outside, and that's just what you do.
Yeah.
And that's what I did over and over,
Wow.
and eventually, being able to service clients at the level that I wanted to, I started adding additional people to the network. And the consultancy then grew into a boutique agency.
Got it. And that is AllSwell.
Actually, that was Left, Left, Right, which was my communications marketing boutique. And I ran that and loved it. It was never huge. I had about 15 people on payroll.
Yeah,
And I
That's
mean, it
pretty
was
big.
big.
That's pretty
I don't
big.
know if I call that necessarily boutique. I mean, within the marketing and like agency world, it's like there's a lot of like solo people, and then there's like huge, massive advertising agencies. It's kind of in the middle, which doesn't exist a lot.
I was never going to be huge. I
Yeah.
knew that. And the role of marketing communications was changing really rapidly
Yeah.
at the time. It was when social media was ramping up. And so there was the democratization of media, and I was adding more people as a way of being able to serve clients in all of these new and different ways. But I saw the writing on the wall, and I recognized that, like, in order to be able to maintain retainers, it was going to start watering down my ROI, because I was going to need to be able to do all of these other things
Yeah.
just to be able to deliver the same level of results. And so watching all of that happen while I was also getting incredibly burnt out, because there I was essentially back in a B2B role.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say you
Yeah.
did the same thing. You ended up there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're your own boss, but
I
you were still
Yeah.
doing the same
Oh my gosh,
thing.
and she's a slave driver. So this idea that I had gone from this creative wellspring of enjoyable work where I was working very closely with the client, and then over time I was moving further and further and further away from that, and really just being responsible for like C-level
Yeah. Being a CEO, which is like vision and managing clients and money and managing your
Strategy.
employees, and you weren't directly there because you were growing. Yeah.
yes. And I had decision fatigue by 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's why I decided to start this little passion project around journaling. And that was where AllSwell Creative came from.
And did you shut down your agency?
Not
No,
initially.
not
No, it
initially.
was never meant to be anything other than a marketing line item for my primary revenue stream. That was it.
Yeah.
You know, something I
Yeah.
started with design forward, gender neutral products that I could bring into my meetings and leave them for people as like a lovely leave
Yeah. It
behind,
is lovely.
and also start getting some media attention for my own business, which
Yeah.
became like a calling card as a sales funnel tool.
Totally.
That was all it was supposed to be.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, did you ever journal before?
Oh, yes.
So you're a huge
Okay.
journaler.
I started journaling when I was 7, and I
Okay.
Oh,
haven't
wow.
stopped since.
Got it.
Okay.
So you're just doing it in your personal life and also probably professionally, and then you're like, all right, I'm gonna just make a product. And then what happened then?
I really felt that journaling had a terrible PR problem at the time. And that was why I was motivated to just start with a product to move something into the cultural marketplace, just to shift the conversation a little bit, to be a different reference point. And it was when I brought the products out to market, that's when the marketplace taught me something that I never knew, which is this thing that I have been doing just intuitively my whole life. People have a remarkable number of hangups around. They think they're
Yes.
bad at it. They think they have to be a good writer. They think their
Mhm.
handwriting isn't good enough. They think it's self-indulgent, that it's Dear Diary, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where the idea for the curriculum came from. I said, I think I can bring my nerdy English major background to bear here, and then all that experiential marketing experience, put together a medium that would be enjoyable and invite people to the page. And that's where the workshops came from.
Wow. Okay. And for someone who does not journal, and like I don't know if it's like in my repertoire, which many people are, what would you say to someone of why they should journal or how they should start? Because it's very intimidating, right? And especially if it's not necessarily part of your habits.
So my recommendation is to really lower the bar.
Okay. Okay.
Make it super easy, super attainable, really enjoyable. I have what I call the microdose method, 4 by 4 by 4.
Okay.
Don't even journal for 5 minutes at a time, 4 minutes at a time.
Okay.
And don't try to do it every day. Just do it 4 days a week. and
Okay.
then try to stick with it for 4 consecutive weeks. So 4 by 4 by 4.
Okay.
And once you commit to something of that nature where you're giving yourself a nice dopamine hit from a sense of accomplishment, but it doesn't stress you out as like one more thing on your self-care
Mhm.
never-ending to-do list, you're going to start reaping the benefits and build in more positive associations. So you're going to want to reach for it instead of feeling like, oh God, I really should, and all that journaling guilt coming in.
And how did you keep up journaling your whole life from 7 to now and continue to do that? I mean, it's really impressive considering how you're in these very, very, very demanding jobs. You were doing a lot, and not necessarily in the best environments to foster creativity. I, would love to just hear how you possibly kept that consistent your whole life. It's very impressive.
How do you think I survived?
Yeah.
It was through journaling.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that I mean,
It was
journaling
like
has
your coping mechanism.
it,
Yeah.
it is how I make decisions. It is
Wow.
how I understand how I think, what I feel. It is how I uh also do problem solving on the
Okay.
page and then create vision out of a lot of noise. I'm able to get really clear. Okay, this is what's next, then map the next steps. So some of it is very linear. It's not necessarily just complaining on the page. And that is, I say, complaining on the page is a totally legitimate form of journaling. It's sort of the little black dress of journaling, the classic approach, but it's only one way to journal.
And do you think you have to journal handwritten? Like, can you type it on a computer? Or do you think it
I'm
needs
not
to
a
be
purist.
handwritten?
You know,
Like,
I
I don't
just
know.
I no, it's a really great question and I know some people will disagree with me, but I've done the research and actually it is better for you to journal via any means
Okay.
than
Then
to
none.
not do
Not
it.
at
So
all. Yeah.
if you are more comfortable on your notes app
Yeah.
or using a keyboard of any kind, I would rather have you do that than not journal. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good.
Totally. Yeah. Like, it's better to do something, nothing, right?
Yes.
Basically.
Now that said, if you are going to journal and you have a productivity mindset, you will get the most benefit from doing it longhand. The mental, emotional, physiological benefits are amplified when you are moving your hand across the page. There are synaptic connections that get made in your brain, so you get the greatest benefit. But again, I'm not a purist. Better via whatever means.
Incredible. And circling back a little bit to where then you with AllSwell Creative and sort of where you are today. So then you realize you're kind of at this point where the career you built accidentally is also not what you want. You are kind of doing this side project mostly as a marketing funnel for your business, also is your own personal passion. Then how did AllSwell Creative kind of grow and become your full-time thing?
So it was this little garden that I planted that I wasn't weeding or watering, and it was growing.
Okay.
And I was so curious about what it could do if I actually paid some attention to it. And as I was saying, like my business was then in this place where I didn't know how to go back to where I was. That didn't seem right. And I was now in this position where I was further and further away from the creative act. And I decided to do something that seemed pretty crazy. I wound down my business and I committed fully to seeing what Allswell Creative could do.
Wow.
Wow. So did you just like hire someone in your place and move away?
No, what I did was I got the people who worked for me other jobs. I
Wow.
got my clients redeployed.
Wow.
The business didn't seem like it was something that there wasn't like a clear path to exit.
Okay.
So instead of trying to like sell it off for parts, I
Yeah.
decided no, I'm going to instead maintain the quality of all of my relationships, look after people and just move on.
And at that point, you obviously had a product line, you had your workshops, which also, how did you put that together? What was that ideation process like?
I want to be clear. People thought I was nuts. People thought I was crazy. They're like, "You're doing what? You're gonna
They're like, what is 4 for?
right, right."
Whatever. 4.
It was arguably maybe a little crazy, but the thing is that I have learned to trust my instincts. My instincts are good. And when I don't trust them, i.e., I take that job that I close the door, put my head down on the desk and cry, it is not the right step. So here I was in a position where I'd had a dream, I'd achieved that dream, I'd outgrown the dream, and it was time for a new dream. And so I just decided, what's over there? Let's go find out. And I followed it.
Because a lot of people, like, obviously journaling is very personal. As you mentioned, it's better to journal a little bit than not at all. It's just your thoughts, your inner thoughts. So there's not really like a program or a workshop where you really put yourself into the mindset of, okay, this is how I should, put it ingrained into my everyday life. So you really made that process accessible. What was the reception like? Did people like that structured way of thinking and integrating into their lives? How did you think to create that? What was that beginning process?
So, this experience of journaling as a collective was something that was new as far as I was aware, but somehow I felt it just made sense to be able to gather together at the table to be able to do this as a group. And what was really fascinating is that I started to see that there's this thing that happens, even though you're doing essentially a very private activity that's something that you're doing essentially by yourself with other people, but you're all doing it together. But I was really clear, at no point would I ask anybody to read aloud from their journal. That was ground rules so that everybody understood that. And also, it would be an interactive experience. I would ask people what the various experiences were like, the various different prompts. So, through the process, what I was seeing is that even though they were doing something that was an individual creative pursuit, the collective was experiencing benefits. And when I dug into the research, there's a term for it. It's called parallel play. It's from early development psychology for when you see two children that are playing next to each other and they're not necessarily interacting, but they're both benefiting from the concentration of being able to do something together. And so there's always this point during a journaling workshop where sort of I call it like the collective mind of the room shifts and it's collective flow state.
Wow.
Well, I mean, it's like studying together is
Mhm.
kind of like the same idea. I mean, you get a lot of that benefit, I feel like, as a child, but it stops when you're an adult, honestly, in a lot of those ways of there are a lot of solo activities you do together as a kid, honestly, whether it's like practicing your instrument or reading in class or studying that then I think really stops as an adult, which is like why a lot of times adults feel like they need community.
Yes.
Um and a lot of times it really is that. I will also say this, like you're incredibly self-aware and decisive as a person. This is like
Yeah.
it's like shocking. It's very
Yeah.
impressive. And clearly I think the vast majority of people do not make decisions in the way that you do, which is a weakness, honestly, and oftentimes will shove their feelings away because something is working or they'll force themselves into a situation that they're miserable and then they basically hit a breaking point and then they leave. Do you think the reason you're so decisive is because of journaling? Like, do you think that forces your self-awareness? Because it's a pretty great quality. I don't
Yes.
know, and rare. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely, because I don't think I'm actually naturally decisive at all.
Okay.
But, I because I veer between left and right brain,
Yeah.
and, the way that I'm able to parse that out and then get really clear on what the next step actually is, despite whether it's like my left brain is saying, "What are you doing?" But I have learned to follow my intuition. I have learned to listen to that internal voice through the act of journaling. But it wasn't always like that. And it's some of it also comes frankly with age, which is
For sure.
one of the most wonderful things about getting older
Yeah,
because
totally.
you have more history,
Mhm.
personal history to refer to and say, "Oh, I did that before. That didn't work. That didn't work out.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
you
so
yeah.
let's make some new mistakes." That's
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make new mistakes. That's it.
That's
Yeah.
a good goal.
Mhm.
And so then you said you're focusing on also kind of you're creating this incredible community. And tell us about how that turned into your book and how you became an author.
So I decided at one point I wanted to bring journaling to non-intuitive environments. I wanted
What is that?
to
What does that mean?
right. I wanted to bring journaling into the corporate world.
Okay,
I
so
wanted to get wounded veterans journaling. I wanted to get um, rooms full of CA agents journaling and venture capital firms, and I have. And so
Wow.
being able to go into a room full of Google data analysts and be able to bring my science backed approach and see how it works in these environments, and my my corporate background has been incredibly helpful in that
Of course.
process.
Yeah, because you understand them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So do you do a lot of like workshops, leadership trainings,
Yes.
etc.?
Yes.
What is, I guess, the biggest difference that you've seen in those type of environments that you mentioned are not intuitive, and the collective that you've built, and then how do you kind of help them realize the benefits of journaling, and then how do you kind of see that shift happening for them as well?
So I've now led hundreds of workshops, thousands of people. Every workshop is wonderful, but my favorite workshops aren't for my I love my wellness ladies. I'm greatly, greatly appreciative. However, my favorite workshops are when I walk into a room full of men with their arms crossed and they are only there because their manager is making
Mhm.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, let's go. Because they are often the ones that have the biggest breakthroughs
Yeah.
Yeah.
because they are so far away from having
Emotional
any.
intuition,
Yes,
creative outlets.
yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yes. I mean, it doesn't matter how embarrassing a day I have. I've got at least
Totally.
four girlfriends on speed
Yeah.
dial, and I can be honest with them.
Mhm.
I'm speaking in massive generalizations right now,
No, but
but
like the typical in general. Yeah,
yes,
totally. Hmm.
but there are actual studies. There was a study that came out of UCLA that the benefits of journaling are actually greater for men.
Oh, I believe
Wow.
that. I totally believe
Yeah.
that. Also, I mean, it's also a very new skill set, right? I mean, in general, society trains men to not be emotionally in tune, not be emotionally expressive, not really complain, not show or express their feelings in any
Any
outward
emotion,
way.
any
Yeah,
vulnerability.
and so, the ability to basically get in touch of that, like, that separate emotional part of themselves, like and also they have less outlets too than women and less deep friendships and all of these things. I completely believe that. It's like 0 to 5 is a lot bigger than 5 to 10, right?
Yeah.
Basically.
Very well put.
Yeah,
Yes.
I totally believe that, and I think it's incredible. I will say this though, do you ever wonder if self-knowledge is bad? Like, there are people that have been through incredible trauma or PTSD or have had really difficult experiences, and their way to function is to effectively not explore it. And do you think, like, journaling actually is harmful sometimes?
So compartmentalization
Yeah,
as a tool. So I'm not a psychologist.
yeah,
I am a journaling expert,
totally, totally.
and I work with a trained psychiatrist
Okay.
before I go into, let's say, grief groups,
Yeah,
or I'm dealing with veterans.
veterans, yeah,
Anything, any place where, or I am a breast cancer survivor, but despite my personal experience, I still made sure to consult with a psychiatrist before I worked with women that were going through treatment. So it's I make sure that what I do isn't just good intentions,
oh, yeah,
that I'm because and I mention that not just because of myself, but I wish more wellness practitioners did it. And I feel like it's incredibly important because you can unwittingly veer people into waters they are not ready for.
yeah,
And you can cause real harm.
yeah,
So the answer is yes, I actually think it can be inappropriate sometimes, particularly in a group setting.
for
So
sure.
you have to be very careful.
Or a corporate one, right? Where I don't know, not necessarily people want to like a lot of times, I mean, especially me as a woman who was in a male dominated environment my whole career, I think like there's a certain level of, masking I think you have to do,
Yes.
right? To survive. So it's like it also, even though I know you're not requiring people to share, I do want I mean, obviously you're very careful, but it is like kind of a difficult line to toe in a corporate environment.
So the groups that I do in a corporate environment are very different than
Okay.
what I do, let's say,
Like on a
at a
weekend retreat.
retreat.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, weekend
Yeah.
retreat of 10 people in the Hamptons is real
It's
different than
is
like JP
very
Morgan conference
yes.
room. I like
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I inherently dial things according to the environment,
Yeah.
the vocabulary, what the particular organization's ethos is. all of that is very carefully dialed for the exact reasons that you're referring to.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to cause harm.
Yeah,
The
of
whole
course.
but also the point isn't to be massively vulnerable in front of each other
Totally.
in a business setting. That would be inappropriate.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And uncomfortable for
Yes.
everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's about for in settings like that, it's so much more about the experience of focusing people towards creativity.
Okay.
Because
I love
creativity
that.
is something that is like much less incendiary
Yeah, totally.
and people can wrap their head around
And there's corporate benefits to it. People are like creative
exactly.
thinking, so
Yeah.
solving.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And so that's really like the focal point that I use in
Yeah.
those settings.
Okay.
Now, they get what's really cool is they often get some of the extra benefits
Of
just
course.
inherently by doing some of the work. And I hope that they'll continue the practice afterwards because now they're like, oh, this makes me a more visionary leader. This makes me a better manager, et cetera, et cetera. Great, keep journaling. And they'll get the additional benefits as well. But I you have to build a careful container.
Yeah.
And in those instances where a vast majority of the audience don't journal or
Yes.
don't want to
Yes.
actively,
Yes.
what do you tell them to change their minds? Because like I like find myself very intuitive, but I don't journal.
Mhm.
I write on my notes app like a religion, so I guess that's kind of like journaling. But
Sounds like you're journaling.
I don't physically like write. So like what do you kind of tell those people that even if they hear the benefits, they don't want to actually do it and change their ways?
I think that it's about shifting the perception of what journaling is. So let's just take somebody who says, "I'm a terrible writer. I don't enjoy writing. I can't do this." And I say, "Okay, do you write lists?" "Sure, I write to-do lists. I write lists." I'm like, "Lists count?" They're like, what do you mean lists count?" Lists are an excellent device. They are a wonderful way as a thin end of the wedge to get into the practice of journaling, but also this is one of the reasons why prompts are so effective as opposed to just starting from a blank page or a blinking cursor. When you are reacting to something, it gives you a task. So when you are engaged in a task, you're much more open for people who are like, this isn't for me. And you give them enough different prompts that they're going to find one that they're like, yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm interested in that. And if it's something as simple as a list, then they can engage.
And then how do you kind of separate journaling from, something that people are writing for work or lists, for example? Like, is that journaling?
Well, it depends on what's on the list,
Yeah.
right? It depends. I think of it as the intention, right?
Mhm.
Are you doing it with the intention of just writing your to-do list?
Right.
One of the things that you can do is flip that, and I suggest writing a done list. So at the end of the day, giving yourself a nice little victory lap. What did you do where you were a good steward of yourself today? It could be something as minimal as you lowered some of your bank fees and you refilled the humidifier. Whatever those things are, but start delineating them before you write your to-do list because even that amount of reflection helps give you a nice little dopamine hit and brings your attention to either I'm dehydrated, I didn't do any of the things, or hey, you know what? I did good today.
Yeah.
I watered my plants, I got in the steps, whatever those things are.
That's super interesting. I feel like that's something that, you can incorporate. It takes only a few minutes at the end of the day,
Exactly.
like right before bed.
Yes. So as opposed to, oh, I'm supposed to sit down and write for 25 minutes and it's got to sound like Joan Didion or Anais Nin and I've got to be sipping like the perfect adaptogen-laden matcha and be wrapped in cashmere. Like that is not helpful. Whose
Yeah.
life is like that?
No.
Whose
Yeah,
life
I
looks
don't
like
know.
that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the
No.
same thing like meditation, for example. Like it's so intimidating. Like obviously you can do it for 5 minutes and it's effective, but a lot of people don't take that step because they're like, oh, I'd rather just not approach it entirely, even though it's really easy to incorporate into your life.
The thing is, and I think meditation is an incredible tool, everybody can write. So you're just using the same skill set that you use all day long. And again, writing like this or writing like this, they count. So everybody writes. So it's just a matter of adapting things slightly and then they start to get the benefits.
And so I guess the target market of Allswell and the book as well is just everyone. Everyone should write, or do you have a specific target market?
Really, my perspective is I'm trying to build a much bigger tent and invite people in who would not otherwise journal.
Mm.
Now, the book is full of things for people who already do journal avidly, consistently, new ways, new approaches, new prompts, new perspectives, and probably some new data points. But my hope is that I'm also going to reach people in sectors that wouldn't otherwise approach it.
So how do you so when you decided that you're going to enter what you called unintuitive environments, how did you convince, the like head of events at, JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs or like these really corporate places that journaling is important one, that they should pay for you to come and do a workshop and that will somehow help, them be productive because that's pretty intimidating.
Well, I grounded everything in science.
Okay.
Yeah. And one of the things that I'm most proud of in the book is all of the peer reviewed science that I cite all the way through because it isn't just my opinion. And when people see that it is all very legitimate and I cite Harvard Business Review, et cetera, they are their guard goes down because they understand that I'm speaking to them peer to peer. And
Yeah.
so they're more interested in having something taking a little bit more of a risk. And I also clearly delineate the benefits so that they understand that there's actually like a bottom line upside for them in having me come in and do this versus, let's say, a yoga class where people are going to be really uncomfortable being in yoga clothes in front of their peers, or like a breath work class, which only, I mean, breath work is great, but does it last any longer than like the time that you do it for somebody who's new to it? This is something that's going to last longer than the walk to the parking lot.
Yeah. And like once someone starts journaling, they can do it forever. So
Yes.
it's like only a one-time investment versus like, 10 yoga classes that the company has to pay for.
Exactly, and it's going to literally increase the quality of their T lymphocytes, the backbone of their immune system, so they're going to be at work more.
More.
It also means that they are going to be more creative, so they're going to be better problem solvers. They're going to take more risks in terms of what they're thinking about, how they're thinking about things, so that they're going to be able to bring like better ideas to the meetings. All of those kinds of good things come out of journaling workshops in the workplace.
And tell us about why you decided to write a book. You obviously have a wealth of knowledge, so I'm sure you were sharing it to your community, and so the book was a great next step. But walk us through the process of why you decided and how that journey has been.
So various different points over the last decade plus that I've been doing this, people were like, Ruben, when's the book coming out? I was like, not anytime soon, because I wanted to wait until I had that body of knowledge that had been really road tested in all these different kinds of environments. So I didn't want it just to be good intentions. I wanted to know that I was offering people real solutions that had already been tested in the marketplace. So I was only bringing them the best. And it took a while for me to accomplish that to the point where I felt really comfortable. And it also just sort of fell in my lap at the right time. I I got a New York Times feature story, and
Wow.
that was completely by
For
accident.
Oh
being like
my
a speaker, for
gosh.
being a speaker and doing these workshops. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and it was just because I sat next to the right person at a barbecue.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like this happens to you like every big milestone.
Yeah. Maybe
It must
journaling
be
is
the
the key. I don't
journaling and the
know. Yeah, it's the
manifestation.
journaling, literally. Yeah.
And that happened, and a friend of mine said, "Have you ever thought about writing a book?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've been working slowly, like, quietly away on a book proposal for the last year or so," and he was like, "Oh, you should talk to my agent, Joy to Tell It, David Black Agency." I was like, "Okay," and I talked to her, and she signed me, and I
Wow.
had no idea how hard it was to get to, like, a sign of an
This is
agency.
not normal.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely not
But I
normal.
think like what's remarkable about it is that I was just in my strike zone. So
Yeah,
I had put in the years in order to
for
get to
sure.
mastery. So I was already there. And I want to be really clear. There were a lot of times where I felt that I was writing into a void. I was speaking to empty auditoriums, either literally or metaphorically. And so, but I was lucky that I didn't have tremendous early successes across the board because I got to hone my craft.
Yeah.
And then with that cumulative experience came mastery. So when it was, I was having,
Topical
yeah.
and yeah. Also, it also became very topical, I think. Like, obviously. It
Oh,
did.
yeah.
Like, you didn't know that, right? You were just like you were basically feeding your passion and creating this business. But then it became very hot, right? Because of like all the instructions of technology. And I think all of us are becoming, like so reliant on AI and like are searching for our own like decision and are looking for that. And then it timed right all of a sudden.
And let me tell you, there were some very painful moments along the way
Yeah.
where these people who had like held me in like professional esteem suddenly when I was when I had been a brand marketer, now that I had this new thing, I would
They're like, "Did she
I
lose her
was
mind?
Oh,
Like, is she
wow.
eat, pray, loving?" Like, it does. You're like, "Okay,
Yeah,
she
it's like, what is she
basically,
doing?
like,
what is
didn't
she
sell her
doing?
agency, she shut it down,
Right.
and then she's now a journaler." Like,
Like, what does
what?
that mean?
Right,
Exactly.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
like,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
interesting. Yeah,
Yes.
interesting
And
choices."
so the people who used to like talk to me at a cocktail party, like, "Oh, so tell me, what are you work?" And instead they were like, "Uh-huh.
Okay.
Oh
Okay.
my
Yeah.
That's
gosh.
right. That's cute.
Like,
Honey,
bye.
do I hear
Yeah.
somebody calling?" Yeah. So it just there were a lot of uncomfortable moments along the way. And even like at one point, one of my former colleagues took me out for a coffee to apologize to me for having made fun of my business to one of my other colleagues behind my back. And all of this is in the introduction to the book. And I say I was early, but it wasn't wrong. And culture has swung in my direction. I have now the 10 plus years of experience to meet it where they are and I am. And it's hitting, which is great.
And how did you kind of get through those uncomfortable moments? Of course, there's like lots of lows. It was a very unstructured, journey to your end goal of being an author. What got you through every day and how did you persevere? Because, being by yourself and having all these people say no and make fun of you behind your back, like that's really hard. So what kept you going?
It fueled me. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All those little moments of those men saying, "Oh, what a cute idea." Yeah. I was like,
Yeah. You're like, your employer's paying me so much money to
and
come talk to you and
mhm.
teach you.
And or I'm gonna make you into my mentor. You're gonna see. You're gonna see. And so taking those moments instead of just being like having it drain me, it kind of fired me up. And as far as like being able to stay the path, I truly believed in what I was offering. I knew again empirically the quality of what I was providing to people. So I never wavered from that. But there were some rocky moments. Of course, that's the entrepreneurial road. And if somebody doesn't have any of them, I almost feel sorry for them because then they don't get to really enjoy the successes.
Of course. And tell us about the book. So is it like a how-to on journaling? Is it more about you? Like what are we to
It is
expect?
not my memoir. That is definitely not
I
my
would love to
memoir.
read that
I would
book.
love to read that
Oh boy,
too.
yeah, no, I never intend to write that. But although I will say
You
that
kind of have it in your journals though. So I
yeah.
don't know. Maybe one day someone's going to do it for you. You
Yeah.
never know.
One of the early readers, however, who was outside of that very tight circle, who was helping me with the book, my editor, my agent, etc. One of the early readers said, Laura, when somebody reads this book, they're gonna know you. And I went, oh no, that was not what I was intending. But I do think that in order to ask people to be creatively vulnerable, which is what I'm requesting of them, I shared some creative vulnerability as well. And some storytelling
Of
because
course.
stories are medicine, right?
Yeah.
And we I think there's a Gloria Steinem quote we've been sitting around campfires telling stories for millennia for
Of
good
course.
reason. But the book really functions as a toolkit for people, and whether they're curious newbies or they are practicing creatives, there's something here for everybody. And it's snackable, you can jump around and you can pick different chapters based on either pain points or benefits. But the book is structured so each section, there are 4 sections, builds on the last sections so that I'm wading people into the deep end. I'm not starting there.
And so I'm Brooke. I want to start journaling. Do I, whatever. I mean, your opinion is everyone should journal, right? Every single person basically should journal.
There's really no downside.
Yeah.
Outside of a clinical diagnosis for somebody who is operating in a situation that is where it could potentially be
Harmful.
Harmful.
yes.
Yeah.
Outside of that, my perspective is everybody will benefit from journaling.
So, should we read your book first? Should we just get a notebook? What should we do?
You don't have to read my book.
Should we read your book and start? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, do you have other resources? Should we use your book as I don't know. Just give it what's your recommended use?
Well, I would love it if you would get my book.
Okay.
And I would love it if you would enjoy my book. I hope
Okay.
you do. I hope it makes
Yeah.
people laugh. I hope they nod along. I hope they feel like somebody's really rooting for them because I
Yeah.
am. But you can start anywhere, anytime. And you don't have to have the most perfect journal. Anything will do. And my recommendation is you can start with something as simple as what I call a sense check. Just I'm super cerebral, as you can tell.
Yeah.
I often feel like I'm a brain walking around on stilts. And so I need something to help me become more mindfully embodied. And I'm not the world's greatest meditator, so I created this thing called 5 senses. What are you seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and feeling? And write it down and do it in layers, right? So what do you hear, and then hear beyond the hearing? So like, you can hear the whir of a refrigerator, but then maybe you hear somebody walking around the apartment upstairs. Like keep going with it with each of the 5 senses. Do it for 4 or 5 minutes, and you will you will see you get this lovely serotonin bath. It reduces cortisol levels. You become more mindfully present, and you fired up your imagination. 5 senses, 5
Yeah.
minutes,
Wow.
4 minutes.
That's
You'll get
super easy.
Yeah.
And obviously, since you've been journaling effectively your whole life, what was different about writing a book?
Oh, totally different animal.
Okay.
Totally different animal.
Okay.
Yeah. And I
Because I would
have
think it would come naturally to you. I mean, you're writing every day, right?
oh, so
For
did I.
years and
So
years.
did I. Yeah, no, I thought that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Not the case.
Okay.
So, I've been writing about journaling for years. So I have this body of that I of
Work.
of
Body of
work
work.
that
Yeah.
I refer to, of course, but also I've honed my voice.
Yeah, of course. And
And
you've taught a million courses and spoken and
yes, yes. And even more so, I've written 4 sample chapters as part of the proposal, and that's what the publisher bought. That's what Simon Schuster invested in. I started writing this book, all of that went out the window. I got totally creatively blocked. And I like the first set of chapters that I handed in first to my agent before I sent them to my editor. They came back like red, and I was dismayed. I was distraught, and it took me a while to write back to my own voice because it, I realized what I was doing was that I have so much respect for a book, like a capital B book, that I was trying to sound like Arthur C. Brooks.
You were doing what lots of other people do with journaling,
Yes.
right? When they
Yeah,
put like all of
that's
these
true.
bars on you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when I finally confessed that to my agent, she said, "Why would you do that? He's an old white guy." And it's so funny that these are the things that even myself, as a creative coach, as a journaling expert, that is why we all need help along the way.
Yeah.
And eventually I did come back to my voice, which is what you can read in the book. But it was an incredible learning experience.
It's amazing. And I mean, obviously, we're super excited to read it. Everyone journal. This has
I'm
been
excited to start
obviously
journaling.
everyone. You had an incredible life. You've had amazing sort of twists and turns along the way. But we have a lot of young listeners. What advice would you give someone who is thinking about pursuing their passion or starting their own business?
Find mentors, ask
Okay.
questions,
Okay.
and ask people out for coffee and say, "I really would just like to ask you 5 questions. Do you have 20 minutes for me?" And if somebody says no or they don't answer, don't take it personally. Just keep asking people. The other thing is don't be intimidated to ask because people want to help. They are actually um it, they feel really great about the opportunity. So you're helping them feel good about themselves. The other thing is before you take the flying leap, I actually highly recommend go work for somebody else, learn, get paid to make mistakes, and see what you don't like, what you do like, and then apply that to your own business.
Those are all great
These are great
advice.
advice. Incredible
What an
advice.
incredible episode. I can't wait to start journaling and read your book. Where can we find you and your book?
Oh, thank you. All major booksellers, which is sort of crazy to say. And find me. You can find me on Instagram. I have two channels, AllSwell Creative, and then I also have my individual channel, Laura L. Rubin, and the website allswellcreative.com. Sign up for the newsletter. That way, you hear all about my digital courses, my retreats, all the 20 stop book tour. And like, come find me, tell me and DM me, tell me how your journaling is going. I genuinely care and I find it endlessly fascinating.
Awesome. Well,
That's
thank you
nice.
so much, Laura. This is great.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. As always, everyone, thank you for listening. And we are at Womansplain Pod on all socials and email us hello@womansplainpod.com for any questions and start journaling to find your big unlock. Thank you so much, Laura, for coming on.
Thanks, Laura.
An honor and a pleasure. Thank
Thank
you.
you.